It is draft week, ladies and gentlemen, and we've got a big old draft preview coming at you. We've got 2 days until day one, so we'll get to as much of the rumor mill as possible. We'll speculate. We will, we'll talk those betting odds and all that fun stuff. But first and foremost, as always, I'm your host, John. We're joined by Michael and Nick as weekly, and this evening we've got Josh Limasand joining us. He's going to talk a little bit about the edge class, a little bit about our Vikes. He's another Vikings guy. And Josh, why don't you go ahead and let the people know where they can find you, and any other backstory you want to give them. Joining us here on Bite Size.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. Have a blog going called MikeOnTheVikes.com. You can see it there. There's not a lot there yet. It's going to ramp up close to as we get after the draft and closer to the season. But basically, I write about the Vikes because I think about it too much, so I need somewhere to put all the information. So I'm very excited. It's draft week, and I appreciate you guys having me on. It should be fun.
Yeah, brother Josh and I used to do the Daily Skull podcast together back in the day. A couple months ago, back in the day. But yeah, we're hyped to have him as part of the Bite Size Sports crew and getting him onto the live shows here with us. So we might have some Vikings content coming up. Oh, I switched something around on us. Getting a little twitchy fingers down here. But yeah, hyped to have you on, man. I think this is gonna be a really fun conversation. I know you do your homework on the draft, and we hate homework, so we'll ask you about some guys we know you've dug deep on and so forth. But let's just talk a little bit of rumor mill. It's draft week. I want to open with I prefaced a little bit, but I think it's 4-1 now. It's all the way up to Will Levis to go number one.
Why? That can't be that. There's no.
No.
You are going to.
I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came from. Well, the rumor is it came from a Reddit post.
It did.
That said he was telling friends and family that he's going one.
Some guy that claims to know him said that he was telling friends and family that he's going to Carolina, which is insane.
It's just an apocalyptic troll.
Seriously.
But
okay.
Let's do this thought exercise a little bit though. Levis goes one. The Texans probably here we go. James knows why. The Texans probably always wanted Bryce Young, presumably. Because Lovey gives him the finger on the way out, gets the win. And then I guess they were in talks to trade up to one at one point or another. And now there's talks they might not even go quarterback.
Well, I was going to bring that up. That's what I keep hearing now, that they're not going quarterback, or they might not go quarterback maybe because they didn't or they had Bryce Young and was assuming he was going number one overall. So if Levis somehow goes one overall, I think that'd be wild. I don't know. I can't see it happening.
But if Young goes one, CJ Stroud has the same agent as Deshaun Watson.
That's true.
And, Texans brass has had their dealings with Deshaun Watson and his agent. Yeah. So that's probably got to turn them off a little bit. On top of the, what is it? What's the acronym for the test? The new Wonderlic thing, S2. Yeah. Outside of whatever 18th percentile or whatever he was in that processing cognitive test.
And supposedly that's false too. So
sure.
Yeah. Nobody knows anything on draft day.
There's a ton of smoke. But one way or the other, there could only be two quarterbacks off the board at most by the time the Cardinals are there at 3. And they've got their quarterback. So I'm gonna pose this one to Nick first, and then we can kind of just open it up. But who do you feel like is the most realistic team, or the team for which it makes the most sense to really go nuts and trade up to 3. Even if that's a smaller trade up, if they're picking kind of high, but who do you feel like moves up to 3 for whoever's still on the board there out of the quarterbacks?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because now I'm looking at some mock drafts where it says CJ is going to go 8th to Atlanta. I'm just like, this entire time we've seen, 1, 2, Bryce, CJ, Bryce, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, the day before, the 2 days before, we're seeing such different things. I feel like it happens every year like this, but yeah, I think that it makes the most sense for a team like Las Vegas just because they need this type of thing more than anybody. Obviously, losing Derek Carr, and we've talked, extensively about the fact that they're like you're the fall team in Las Vegas, man. They always make the mistake. They always sign some guy that they think they're going to be great, like Devontae coming to play with his best friend. A year later, his best friend's gone. I think that Las Vegas, if they can get their guy and make a trade to get up to 2. And solidify their franchise guy and kind of make a splash here. I think that would definitely, make the NFL, make the rest of the league, wary of them and kind of, we're here, we're making moves. We're going to sit back and watch.
Yeah, and last offseason it was seeming like they were right there. They were making moves, kind of keeping pace with the rest of the division, going nuts last offseason. But we talked about a couple weeks back how the Jimmy G move kind of feels like a soft reset, like they're half-assing the rebuild when they really should tear it down and go young. And yeah, I think them moving up for a quarterback makes a ton of sense, and they might not need to, it's going to be bank breaking regardless, just because the team with whom they're trading up is going to have so much leverage. But yeah, going up from 7, they might be able to do that pretty feasibly.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, Michael, any alternative thoughts on other teams that could do with the trade up?
I just want to start by saying that my first inkling was Raiders too. It just feels like a Raiders thing to do to move up. So to be a little bit different though. The Pats would never do something like that, but I think they would never do that. But New England could use, an exciting young quarterback, I think, and then maybe even Tampa Bay at 19 looks like a team that I don't even know what they have for draft capital. I haven't looked at them in depth, but those are a couple names that come to mind.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the Bucks move up because they're already there as far as resetting things. Devin White wants out. Devin White wants $20 million a year, whatever. A lot of those kind of Super Bowl run type vets that they kept bringing back are Cameron Brate's gone, so I think they're done. I think they're done trying for the big one. So that'd be really interesting. I've seen them in mocks like take Hendon Hooker right at 19. But that's one I haven't thought of much. Any other thoughts there, Michael, on trade ups?
I don't see it feasibly happening just with their current contracts and other needs, but the Titans maybe.
Is James in the chat? Who do you want at 3, James?
They are in the market supposedly, although I guess it was confirmed that it's not true that they're trading Derrick Henry, although then other sources are saying that it is true. So if they can, it won't be like a high pick by any means, but if they can get something to help trade up, I could see the Titans moving up to 3 because I said it during our mock draft. There's just no reason that Arizona needs to keep their 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, I saw. I think it came out of a presser, but they've lost faith in Malik Willis.
Yes, which
stop with the nonsense, and I kind of agree with him.
Who's he talking about? Tannehill?
Yeah,
I think he's talking about Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I don't get the losing faith in Malik Willis right away. Like, he shouldn't have touched the field at all unless Ryan Tannehill was injured. But even then, they had Josh Dobbs. So
and when he did, I think the frequency of designed quarterback runs did not go up actually.
Yeah.
From James like CJ Stroud. I think it was like 5 or 6 QB runs per game that he was the starter for, which is not enough.
No.
You have to use his dynamism if you're going to have him in the lineup, especially as a rookie. As you're just trying to get his feet wet. Let him cook out there. I think it's probably the Vrabel, kind of thing. Like I think it was a preseason game. He took him out after a play that he scrambled for a first down on because he didn't make the read Vrabel wanted him to, or he wanted the ball out, or something like that. So it might have just been that hard assness of Vrabel there kind of weighing him down. But
the Patriot way.
Here's James, and James is a Titans fan, for those of you who don't know. Attitude after those losses, that was a huge issue. Yeah, I could definitely see that being part of it. He's definitely more tapped into the Titans than any of us, of course. But that's an interesting one. That's an interesting one for the Titans, especially if it is CJ Stroud who ends up falling. That's when I think there's a lot of teams that are really going to be hammering the phones. Because
for sure.
Even if some of these top teams have grown a little less fond of CJ over the last couple of weeks, however much of that is smoke, I think there's some teams, like the Vikings, like the Bucks, like teams that would really need to fork over a ton of draft capital to move up. I think all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, one of these surefire starting caliber quarterbacks, one of these 2 guys we've been talking about for 9 months, is going to be available at 4, 5. Even if it's all the way up to 3, I think a lot of those teams feel better about that move than, as far as a risk factor, than they would about moving up for Levis or even Anthony Richardson. Just because Stroud is probably a lot more pro ready. Another comment on Willis here. But that's going to be an interesting part of this draft. I mean, you never know how those trades are going to unfold. One trade we finally know how it's going to unfold, or has unfolded, is that of Aaron Rodgers.
It's about time.
It's about time.
It's about time.
It's about time. He has been on the edge of his seat for 2 months. And I'll start with the Packers fan. How do you feel about this compensation for the Rodgers deal, just kind of on a surface level, just in general? And then how do you feel about it kind of based on, the last few weeks of back and forth? Like, is this more or less than you thought you would have ultimately get for him? Is it, it's probably less than was initially figured, like right away. But then as it started to get drawn out and, it was just a staring, like I think Gutekunst would just call, what's his name? And they would probably just sit there on the phone, just breathing into it for a little while. All right, I'll call him back tomorrow.
I at a surface level, I feel good about it. I obviously as a person whose entire life is basically been Aaron Rodgers when it comes to consuming football. I was alive during the Favre era. Obviously, I don't remember any of it like consciously. One of my earliest football memories is watching the Super Bowl that the Packers won. So just start off with a bang. So of course, having that like attachment to Aaron Rodgers as a player, that part sucks because I am going to miss watching. I know you guys are Vikings fans, but the greatest thrower of a football for my entire life. Like I am going to miss that.
It can fling it.
Yeah. So, but when it comes to, trying to be objective talking about the trade part of it and like moving forward with Love. I like this trade. I've been told by very few other Packers fans that they don't like the trade. I know there was a lot of really pessimistic Packers fans and Jets fans all saying that the Packers would be lucky to get a fourth. They'd be lucky to get a seventh and Corey Davis. Like, it's just absurd things. Like, I know he's older. I know he's owed quite a bit, but it's Aaron Rodgers. Like, he played injured a lot, and now, granted, that's been pointed out to me a lot when I've talked about his struggles last season. But he was injured a lot last year. He's still Aaron Rodgers. Like, he's going to require more than bad draft capital. He's not Brett Favre at the end of his career, who was always throwing picks, well, quite honestly, the entire time. But so I'm fine with it. I really like it. I do like the conditional second becoming a first if Rodgers plays 65%. That's huge. And
65 is kind of a low number too.
Yes, like they either, hopefully he doesn't get hurt, but like they would have to be, like they would have to bench him after week 10? Like if they go 0-10 and the season's a wash, like
yeah,
there's no way that he doesn't play 65%. And for the Packers to get a conditional pick in the sense that it depends on how much he plays and not whether or not he's still there in 2024, like that's huge. That's the biggest part of this trade, honestly. Like the first round pick swap this year is cool, but I think the biggest part is that conditional first for next year.
Yeah, that's huge. I was a little surprised to see that there wasn't like a Corey Davis or like a Jermaine Johnson throw in to kind of tip the scales. I'm surprised they worked it out with just picks. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good return, to be honest, because there was a lot of times, where it was just like, oh, maybe it's 2 2s or maybe it's the second and change. And even being able to work up, moving up 2 spots, I think could be really valuable depending on how this board falls.
Right. I feel like the conditional pick too. I feel like that. I mean, I have obviously no inside information. I feel like that's kind of where the compromise was made a little bit, right? You have to feel like Packers are trying to get 2 first-round picks, this year's first, next year's first, with no strings attached to it. And I think this is a way to kind of meld it in the middle. But you have to think, that he's going to play those 65% at least, because the Jets are a team that did this because they're trying to contend. They're trying to get with that good defense and other things. So my first inkling is that it's a pretty fair trade. I think it works well for both sides. I think some people said the Jets overpaid, but it's like a weird it's hard to value Aaron Rodgers because you have MVP caliber, Hall of Fame caliber quarterback who's aging, injured, and weird. So it's hard to decide. Like it is hard to value that. But I think at the end of the day, I think both teams get what they want, and the Packers, had to do something like this, and so at least they didn't get nothing or something. So seems like a fair trade for me on surface value. So.
Yeah, and at the end of the day,
I disagree with all you guys. I disagree with all you guys. I think Zach Wilson's going to give him hell in training.
Okay. Yeah.
You never know. You never know what motivates him.
Mike,
I don't know. Rodgers doesn't even talk to his mom. I don't know about that.
65%. I don't know about that. I think Zach Wilson's taking the job over in week 4.
Was Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, neither of them talk to their moms. That's crazy.
Yeah, there you go.
Good trade this really was, guys.
Yeah, and an enigma of a man who belongs nowhere else but the Big Apple.
For real. I don't know how he was an Ashwaubenon this whole time.
Honest to God, yeah. So, but obviously, it's a big time move. We mentioned how the Jets are trying to contend. So we're going to kick it over to our NFC East source. And Nick, what do you think? What do you think the Jets need to do? One, how does the move up potentially affect how this turns out? But what do the Jets need to do in this draft to really push the Bills to contend for the AFC East, because they still should be the favorites. I think in all of our opinions. I did pick the Dolphins in our little preview, but I was just trying to.
You also picked the Chargers over the Chiefs.
I was just trying to mix it up a little bit. Come on, guys.
Yeah,
Just throwing out stuff to this.
we just agree on everything.
We're not getting any clicks off your guys' takes. Come on.
I know. Yeah.
No,
We have to do better, guys. We got to be more outlandish. Come on.
exactly. But what how wide do you think the gap is? And yeah, like what do they need to address to solidify this roster to the point where, as a Bills guy, you're a little worried? You feel like the Jets are right there with you.
Yeah, I'm worried already. Because this team was formidable last season, and I was like, when we lost that game in the Meadowlands, I was like, it's obviously not a game that you go into thinking you're going to lose as a Bills fan, just because you usually dominate the Jets, whether it's home or away. But when that game kind of started to unfold, I was like, wow, this team on defense is a monster. They don't really let Josh do what he wants to do. He's not, able to, make the plays that, the Bills have a system where it's like, there's plays that we run every game that it's and it just works. Diggs is open, throw it. He's going to be there because somebody else is double covered or whatever, right? And in that game, that wasn't happening, and it was a little perplexing to watch because it's just, I think it was the first game all season that happened. So I wouldn't say they have to go defense in the draft to really scare me. I mean, if they did, listen, just keep beefing it up. But I think that if you go O-line and try to really protect A-Rod, I think that was a big problem for the Pack last year. They weren't able to protect him as much as they needed to. And then, just continuing to get some, wide receiver help. Obviously, they bring in Lazard, who's Aaron's, cohort, best friend, whatever. He's been playing with him for a while, but I think that Garrett Wilson's going to be a star in this league, and Aaron Rodgers will help him and catapult that. But if they can grab like another receiver that like some kind of speed demon that can like help out in like the backfield, like a Tyreek, or I'm a Bills fan, so like Isaiah McKenzie used to do that a lot, something like that. And then of course in the first round, I think they should totally go offensive line. One of those guys, Shkronsky, all of these dudes. Who else? We're talking about guys like Anton Harrison, Paris Johnson. If they can get one of those guys, I think that kind of solidifies themselves as that, 1A, 1B team with Miami and Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And yeah, you talk about beefing up the O-line. You've also got Breece Hall coming back, and Michael Carter, who's been a really good runner since he entered the league out of North Carolina. That's a pretty good duo in the backfield as well. CJ Uzama at tight end. It's a really good tight end draft. They could beef that up there potentially. But yeah, I think, and kind of a follow-up question actually for you too. We're going to stick AFC East for just a minute because you talk about them looking for offensive line help.
Yeah.
Directly before them now sit the Patriots at 14, who we talked about need offensive line help. But you took O-linemen for both of those teams at 13 and 14 on our mock last Monday. But now the Jets sit behind the Pats, who have a similar need. And they're also behind Green Bay, who could potentially go O-line at 13. Who knows? So how do you think that affects their board there? Because, I mean, we could see a run of tackles go pretty early. For the Patriots, do you feel, as the Patriots, do you feel a little bit more confident in your position at 14 now without having to wait for the Jets pick? Because similar needs and probably similar targets.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Belichick should be licking his chops. I think that even before this trade went down, I think that the Pats kind of knew that it probably would have, gone down. I don't think that they were in the mindset that this wasn't going to happen. So to counter your question, I think that the Patriots had a feeling this was already going to happen before this today or yesterday, right? So they were probably not looking at this draft like we're behind the Jets. Now that it's finally finalized, I think that both teams are still looking O-line, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Pats some calls, maybe from the Jets who were like, maybe those guys are off the board and the Jets really need that. And they call the Pats and like, hey, you want to trade, for 14? And then maybe they can, leverage that. I mean, the Patriots have some leverage now that they can, make a move and try to acquire somebody from the Jets and that pick. and then maybe the Jets give him back something. I think that the Patriots are in a much better place now than they were before this trade was finalized. I still stick with my guns. I still think both teams more than anything need O-line help.
Yeah, and the Jets still have 43. They traded 42, but could use some of that to move up. Still jump the Pats. Who knows? We could see the Pats trade back, and it's all moot because that's the Belichick way to go. He's got somebody nobody's thought of that he wants to take at 14, so he might as well trade back for him.
So true.
Speaking of prospects nobody's thought of, Josh, I know you've dug into this year's edge class a fair amount.
Yep.
One of the deepest ones we've probably ever seen. Not quite as top heavy as some in years past. We've got the Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, debate up top. I suppose it's turned into. There's a lot of smoke around Tyree Wilson being the pick at 2. Let alone being ahead of Will Anderson on some people's boards. But what's interesting about this class is the kind of that second, third tier of edge rushers. And there's just so many guys that seem like they should go between like 20 and 50, and you don't really know who teams are going to prefer. So my question for you is, who is, for us and the viewers, a day 2, day 3, round 2, round 3 even edge prospect who you think could be selected in the first round that maybe people haven't really familiarized themselves with yet?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mentioned deep draft in the range of 20 to 50. I was doing a lot of research from our guy Brett Coleman. His videos on prospect rankings and stuff are spot on, and I know he's obviously a better analyst of film than I am. So I used watched a lot of his stuff for some research. And you mentioned that tier 2, 3. He's got 9 guys in his second tier of edge rushers.
Really?
He's got 9 guys, and he says you can rank them however you want. It depends on what you're looking for. And he has some of them that could go as high as top 20, or could be, late second round selections. It really depends on how the board falls. Like you guys are talking about offensive tackle for, the Jets and the Pats and the Packers in that mid teens range. It kind of depends on like where the teams feel there's a drop off between like a certain caliber of player versus the next best. Like for tackles, for example, like if, Skoronski goes 8-9 to the Bears even, which is a possibility, and then Paris Johnson right after, like, is there a big enough drop off to make those middle teens picks wait for tackle? Then you might see even more edge rushers coming off in the first round. You mentioned like the obvious ones that are probably top 10, top 15 picks at the most, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy and Nolan Smith are guys that I've seen over the course of the offseason go from late first round picks to like probably top 15 picks. And then you have Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa, who's like everyone's considered like their favorite guy that from a raw talent standpoint, whoever wants him can make him be whatever they need him to be at edge. And so he's probably going to go in the top 15, so assuming that those guys are gone, we get into that, get into that tier 9, and I'm gonna borrow a name from Brett Coleman because I was so surprised, and it was one that I hadn't even looked at, and he said he could go as high as 14 and he wouldn't be surprised. And his name is Keon White, and he's the edge rusher from Georgia Tech, and he's kind of focusing on being like a 5 or 6 technique edge, but he's elite at stuffing the run from the inside and the outside. He's undervalued. Obviously, because I thought I had looked at a lot of names, and then I found that there were even more. This isn't. I don't know if it's deepest ever because I've mentioned to some of you guys this is probably the most analysis and research I've looked into the draft for like this year for me personally. And so I don't have a frame of reference, but that sounds like if you're not taking an edge rusher this year, you're missing out. Like it would be really hard for any team at this point to not have an edge rusher available. So that would be the surprise one, because I looked at, guys that, John, I know you and I have talked about Will McDonald at Iowa State, who is kind of looked at as like a late first round guy. So he wouldn't really surprise me to go late first round. It just depends on on if the teams or as the draft goes, if a couple edges go and people go, okay, I got to get in and get my edge rusher. We could see anywhere from 6 or 7 edge rushers in the first round to like 15. I get like a crazy, half the first round. I don't know. Maybe I don't know if that might be just ridiculous. But in terms of a guy with first round talent that could go that maybe isn't looked at, that Keon White name really stuck out to me. Like he looks like a beast. I watched some of his highlight reel, and he's going to be really good. He's maybe not like, I've seen some people talk about him with Lucas Van Ness similarly. He's just not quite as like quick, bendy, elusive, whatever you want to call it, as Van Ness, but definitely up there with talent. And so if a team likes that talent and they like it, why not in the first round? Because there's going to be so many good ones, appearing to be so many good ones in this draft.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how the board falls, I think.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. You mentioned 14, and I could see that being like a Patriots pick.
Yeah.
Just because that's like, hey, yeah.
Yep.
I don't care about your consensus board.
Listen, because he's
in the
PFF.
war room.
Yeah, PFF has Keon White as like their 11th edge rusher, right? So that's even pretty high, but it's 60th overall. So again, it's one of those things. I feel like because I think about wide receivers sometimes too. There's wide receiver seems to be where some people think there's going to be like 3 or 4 in the mid to late first round, and some people don't think there's going to be the first one till late or later on after JSN. But it's like, if teams start feeling like they're going to miss out, who knows? We might see edge at some point in the draft. It's going to get pretty,
right.
It's going to be pretty fun to watch, I think, especially the first round.
Yeah. Keon White's interesting. Older prospect, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's already 24.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But huge frame. He's got that like Cam Jordan almost kind of frame, 6'5",
290, 6'5", 290, yeah.
290, yeah. I mean, so yeah, like a hog of a 4-3 edge. Probably some 5 technique and odd fronts.
Yeah, the kind of the knock on him is not a super deep arsenal of pass rush moves is kind of what, and for a guy that, like you said, he's an older prospect, I think he's a redshirt senior even. So like, to not have those things develop might be a little bit of a red flag. But they'll have an idea of like, this is what we're going to have him do. And he could be really elite at that. So
yeah, you get him with like, like the in the Eagles D line room or Seattle, their pass rush specialist coach. I can't think of his name, but he's an absolute monster. He's worked with some really high level pass rushers in the past, and kind of gotten them where they need to be. But yeah, he might be one of those guys, toolsy, unrefined, could go a lot higher than we think.
For sure.
You mentioned receivers a little bit, and I think that's a fine way to take this conversation, because that's another route the Patriots could potentially go. I know Zay Flowers has actually been working with Bill O'Brien a little bit over the last couple of months. I know they met at the Senior Bowl. They might have met before then, but Bill O'Brien was one of the coaches at the Senior Bowl. So that's an interesting thing there. But Michael, if you had to put some money on it, and this is kind of free balling,
Okay.
where do you think the first receiver, you don't even have to pick who the first receiver is, where do you think that first receiver comes off the board? Let us know in the chat too, where you think that first receiver comes off the board, who your favorite edge prospect is. We'll definitely chat about it.
Okay. Well, so I like to think 13. the newly acquired pick 13 from the New York Jets.
You'd love to think that, wouldn't you?
I would love to think that. However,
so bold.
I do think who has the pick right before the Packers?
It's the Texans at 12.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think that if it's got to be the Texans. I think it kind of depends, because if the Texans go quarterback at 2, I think they kind of have to get him somebody to blossom a career with.
Sure.
I know that there isn't really a college connection might not happen. There might not be like a Joe Burrow and a Jamar Chase kind of like situation there, but the Texans are in a real situation where they're restarting.
It's a situation.
They're not Las Vegas where they're doing a soft reset. So they definitely, I could see them taking a receiver at 12. And then Green Bay gets scared and panics and trades out of 13 for some reason. But I think Houston taking a receiver at 12 makes a lot of sense. I know you said I didn't have to say what receiver it is.
You're like,
for the Texans, I want them to take somebody not named JSN. However, if they do take JSN, maybe they take a CJ Stroud at 2, and then they take JSN, and there is that connection. Then I'm fine with like a Zay Flowers going to Green Bay. I think, to me, those are my 1A, 1B, like back and forth. You can swap them receivers.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, JSN, Flowers, JSN, I'm happy either way.
Gotcha. Nick, you think higher or lower first receiver off the board?
Higher or lower? I think it literally exactly where he was thinking. Texans at 12, take JSN. Literally, that's where I'm at. What I was gonna say though is, if the Packers do end up acquiring Zay or drafting Zay, that duo of like Zay Flowers and then like what's his name, the fucking star,
Christian Watson.
Yeah, Christian Watson. Yeah. With Love and then Zay Flowers, it's really not that bad with Aaron Jones.
I'd be excited.
I'm excited about that, right? Like all of a sudden Rodgers is gone. It's like it reminds me of like when Russ is gone, and like it's like, oh, Seahawks are gonna suck. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, they're not. They're not so bad. I feel like if they can do that, the Packers are all of a sudden back on like track, and it's like they're not going to be a 4-win team. They could easily be like an 8 to a 10-win team. Because we've seen a decent amount of Jordan Love. I'm not like huge on him, but I'm not like low on him. I think I'm a little mid, and I'd like to see him with, having the reins, having that, confirmation that I'm the guy, which he now has. And if they can get Zay Flowers, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, and I really like that. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all if I'm on Green Bay.
That's the best thing that Nick has ever said.
I'll go bold here because I actually, side note, I kind of agree with a receiver at 12. That seems to make sense to me when the first receiver goes off. I'll go bold here, and I'll say that Seattle has an aging Tyler Lockett. They have the 5th pick, but they also have the 20th pick. And let's say they really like JSN more than everybody else, and they don't want to trade up, or they're worried there's not going to be another guy there at 20. So maybe they go wild and crazy and get JSN because they are running it back with Geno Smith. I've seen some people say it might be fun to see Anthony Richardson go to Seattle, as Geno Smith ages out and kind of work with him there. But that'll be my bold claim. I don't know if I think it's actually going to happen, but I can see Seattle thinking a receiver would be fun with DK Metcalf and a little bit aging but still effective Tyler Lockett.
That's a team that could leverage a trade down too with a team like Vegas, with a team like Tennessee, potentially there, and feel pretty good about it. Yeah. And then slam receiver early. They need a lot of help on like the D line, but a third really good weapon for Geno, especially with the tackle duo they drafted last year, could be really effective to kind of keep him afloat. Speaking of quarterbacks and floating, Anthony Richardson has been all over boards also. I mean, the betting odds are going nuts. Levis might go before him. He's the high risk, high reward guy. Michael, if you had to pick, we'll keep it within the realm of, somewhat realistic. What is your favorite landing spot for AR-15 that you can kind of make some sense of?
So I'll tell you my favorite, and it was just brought up by Josh. Seattle. I think with them extending Geno and Anthony Richardson isn't, I wouldn't say pro ready. So I think him sitting behind Geno for, even though it's a 3-year contract, it looks more like 2. To have him for those 2 years, let Pete Carroll work his magic on him. I that's my favorite spot for Anthony Richardson to go. I would hate to see him fall to the Raiders. For no real reason. I've noticed over the past, couple of months, I've just started to really dislike the Raiders for no real reason. I think it's just I think it's just like
Join us,
Josh
Michael.
McDaniels. And I never really liked Jimmy G. The only players they have that I like are Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. Actively like. I feel very indifferent about a lot of that roster because it's not good. So I really don't want him to go to the Raiders. I think what's going to happen there is he's going to go to Josh McDaniels, who doesn't know how to coach a Pee-wee football team, and he's just going to turn him into a horrible quarterback, and then he's going to retire for 5 years and then come back and try to be a tight end, and it's just like the Florida Gator prophecy. I don't know. I don't want him to go to Las Vegas. I want him, if he's going anywhere in the top 5, it's at 5 to Seattle.
I'm with you. Yeah, they can't draft O-line there. Yeah, it's a bad place for a guy like that. And they're probably more years away from being ready to contend than Anthony Richardson is years away from being ready to start. And I say contend pretty loosely. I think they're going to be dog shit for 2 years, 3 years, and then maybe take an incremental step forward. But that's an interesting one. Does anybody else have, off the top of their head, a big Anthony Richardson landing spot? Nick, go for it.
I was gonna say, once Mike said Seattle, and then we're thinking about Las Vegas. Right in that area is Atlanta, and it's so interesting to me because, as I just said, CJ going there in this mock draft I just saw, I just think that once we're watching the draft on Thursday and Trev and all of those boys are in Kansas City watching it, I think that it's just going to be Bryce Young, CJ 1-2, and it's going to be, oh, look at all that speculation, and it's just the 2 guys we thought all along, and all of a sudden Atlanta's like, oh shit, we went. And then Anthony Richardson, AR-15's there at 8, and they're like, you know what, we don't really have a guy right now. Desmond Ritter's not exactly who we want. And then it's like, this guy could be an absolute star. Why not? I like the fit in Atlanta a lot more than I like in Las Vegas. And I like it more than I like it in Seattle just because of what we're saying. Geno, 3-year contract, looks like 2. But he's still he did lead the league in completion percentage. He's not ready to move on with his life yet in his career. I think that he kind of found a home in Seattle. I know he's aging. But if I'm Anthony Richardson, I don't want to be sitting there for 2 to 3 seasons not doing anything, even though he might not be pro ready now. He might be in 2024, right? And then he's like, well, I'm sitting behind, Geno, who had another good year. And Atlanta, he's ready now. He could, they can always start with Ritter, and if he's not that guy, move on to Richardson. I think that it's not a bad fit at all for Atlanta.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad spot for him to be baptized by fire either, because if you think about Arthur Smith offense, you think about one of the best run blocking offensive lines in football. Guided Tyler Algier to a 1,000-yard season. They brought back Caleb McGarry at right tackle, who was a mauler. reset the guard market with the Chris Lindstrom extension, who's an all-pro. Suddenly, that's a pretty high floor offense, in my opinion. If you just, lean into AR's current strengths, which are athletic ability, and you have a guy to whom you can just throw it up if you need to, and Kyle Pitts, and I think
Drake
he'll
London.
be used. Drake London, and give me a second, and Mac Hollins, former Raider.
Mac
Collins. It's
I mean, they're all 6'5", so I think that would be, for a 53% completion percentage passer.
Yep.
Just give him bigger targets.
It might be like 59.
But yeah,
It might be 59.
it's funny. It's funny you guys brought up Atlanta. I was listening to a CBS Fantasy podcast about what would happen to the prospects of a Drake London, of a Kyle Pitts, if for some reason Anthony Richardson does go there. And they were like, well, it can't be any worse than what they were getting with Mariota last year. And if Ritter's not the guy, what was Ritter, a third or fourth round pick last year? Or was he all the way second round?
Third, I want to say third.
Yeah, so
maybe second, but yeah.
So they have kind of an out there. It's not like last year they took their first round pick with Ritter and they have to develop, they have to stick with it. If they don't feel confident, if they don't want to pass up, I think it makes sense Atlanta, especially with that offense, like you said, a lot of running, a lot of targets, and from a passing standpoint, it's hard to be much worse than they were last year with what they had. So
for sure.
Yeah, and he was a third round pick, so it's not like they made some commitment on him, as you just
exactly.
No, you can just get rid of him.
Yeah. Send him to Las Vegas.
Get rid of him.
Send him to Las Vegas.
Yeah, man. Send him to Vegas. Screw it.
I will say,
Who cares?
Ritter and 8. Ritter and 8 for 7. Let's do it.
Anthony Richardson going to Atlanta. The only issue with that is he said that he's going to wear number 2 in the league. I don't know how Atlanta's going to feel about him taking Matty Ice's number.
Ooh.
Because he doesn't want to wear 15. He wants to wear 2.
That'd be a spicy one.
Yeah.
Do they make AR2s?
I'm surprised, by the way, that Rodgers isn't wearing 12. He got the blessing of Joe.
I think it probably means too much.
It's
and he knows that there's
8 is interesting, right?
He's going to wear 8. It's what he wore at Cal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Why? It's been a long time.
I think
Elijah Moore's gone.
The Jets use
Elijah Moore's like, are you serious? I wanted that number in the rafters.
That Clay Matthews tweet that says the body's not even cold yet when they drafted Rashawn Gary. It's yeah. The Jets' new unis, I think they're the goofiest looking thing, and I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to look even goofier, like in them, like with his like big bulbous helmet that he has, and like it just doesn't. The only jerseys they have that look good are like their black alternates. So,
yes, I think they're objectively bad. Otherwise, I'm with you there.
Yes.
When the Jets got those new uniforms for the first time, a Jets fan friend of mine said sometimes these teams need to rebrand and make them look really bad so that they can build back up, and the new ones that they get is like, oh, it's just so much better than those. You know what I mean? So
it's
right
the long
now,
play, it's the long play.
The new ones, they're going to be like, well, it's better than the other ones. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, Cardinals have been doing that for like 17 years.
Yeah, I know.
And these ones are shittier somehow.
They went down. They're like, guys, expect number 1 picks for like the next 4 seasons.
Yeah, they did it on purpose. Now when they get the new ones in 5 years, it'll be like, well, those are better than those in 2023. Right?
It looks like they made those on like NCAA 12 and just made them on like the uniform creator or whatever.
Yep.
But they didn't know how to zoom out on the lettering.
Yeah.
So the Arizona is just gigantic.
And they were just like, you know what? We don't have enough time for this. The team sucks. Let's just go with it.
Yeah.
Like, what does it matter?
Jonathan Gannon was talking about how Eagles fans wanted to fire him after they were 9-0. It made no sense. So,
no sense.
Not at all.
If Kyler thinks he's playing for Oklahoma, we might see some really good scrambles out of him.
Yeah.
Might come back to form.
ACL or not.
Yeah, right. All right, Nick, I've got another question for you.
Go.
When you look at this draft as a whole, whether it's based on position, total capital, specific player you think they're primed to take, what sort of middling team can really catapult themselves into Super Bowl contention with a big time, well executed draft this season? Think like Jets or Seahawks drafts of last year, that sort of thing where the draft class is really able to contribute early. Whether that's one or two holes to fill or a lot of needs. But what team do you feel like could really get there if they just address a few of those?
So we're talking about a team that's like middle of the pack.
Yeah,
Right.
even if it's
Right.
even if it was a playoff team last year, just kind of
Okay.
take out those top 6 to 8 contenders that we know about and talk about a lot.
Yeah. Okay. I think that if it's borderline, right? Because it could be to 68, but I'm gonna go with the Chargers. I think they have a really solid draft. They all of a sudden catapult themselves from a team that might win the division to a team
Not
that
the Chargers.
is Chargers.
Trevor in the chat. Sorry.
AFC Vikings.
If they can get some like stud players, like a Michael Mayer, like a tight end, or a Zay Flowers, a receiver. I think that they could really catapult themselves. They were so close last year. They finally made the playoffs, which is it was such a big, hump that they needed to get over. They're over it, right? They got to the playoffs. They choked like the biggest lead of all time. Fine. But if they can have a really good draft, and now they have new, new coaching staff. Finally got that jerk Lombardi out of here. We got Kellen Moore in here, and now Herbert and him is really gonna mesh. We've talked about it time after time in this podcast. If they can just continue to hit on their draft picks, and I think that they will, we're gonna see in like the third and fourth round, we're gonna be like, man, the Chargers are really bringing something together here. Then by kickoff time, week 1, we're gonna be like, this Charger team is good. Like I don't know what's gonna happen during the year. Injuries always seem to happen. Charger's gonna Charger, but if they can make it happen in this draft, they're going to be like a top 6 to 7 team, that PFF is saying, in the power rankings before the season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And it's really, that's a team that's like far away, but not so very far away from contending, because it's like, okay, if everyone's back healthy, it's probably like a playmaker on offense, talk Austin Eckler off the edge, draft a linebacker and an interior defensive lineman, and you might be cooking. I'm with you there. Let's get back to some of these prospects a little bit. And we're going to go around the horn here. And we're going to talk just positions. And this could be any round, any projection, any type of thing, but just your favorite prospect at that position, and just kind of why you feel that way. We'll do a few positions and see where that takes us. But let's start with cornerback, which I feel like is also a very, very deep position. It's got some of those guys at the top, but it's not like a Sauce Stingley top of the class. But it's again a very, very deep class. I think second and third tier has a lot of pretty interchangeable guys. But yeah, let's go clockwise here and start with you, Michael. Who's your favorite corner coming out this year?
Christian Gonzalez, hands down. One, and this shouldn't be my first reason, but it is a valid reason. He works 0. And I think that is the coolest number that you can wear. And now that it's allowed in the NFL again, awesome. I am
your
super excited
reasoning
for
was
that.
because his number's 0? Oh my god.
That's not my main reason.
That's just reason one.
That's reason one.
Chief reason.
Okay, that's reason.
Yeah.
It's the most important reason.
It's a reason. It's not the reason. No, I'm just a really big fan. Like I really wanted to think, about picking Deontay Banks. I'm also a pretty big fan of him. Really hope that he doesn't end up in Minnesota. I don't think Christian Gonzalez would be able to get to Minnesota, but I also don't want him there either. But I don't know. I like Christian Gonzalez. Like as a person, he seems, Sauce. Love Sauce as a player. Thinks he's funny. I think he's awesome. Like on Twitch and stuff. But I will never forgive him for the whole cheesehead thing and then burning it to like summon Aaron Rodgers or something. So I like Christian Gonzalez. Seems like a real stand-up guy, and I don't think that he's ever going to take something as precious as that and do that. He seems more of a stand-up guy. Exactly. He's not going to desecrate the cheese.
That's
he
hilarious.
just seems like a good guy. He's like 6'1", 210. I mean, he might be a little heavy. 201.
He might be 6'2". Yeah, 6'1", 6'2". No, great frame.
Exactly.
Might be the first corner off the board.
Yeah.
But he's got that skill set for sure. Josh, who do you like at corner? Chat, let us know too who you're thinking. If we miss anybody, who your favorite corner is.
I might be a little bit biased on the fact that it's a possibility with Deontay Banks, but he's one that I've liked throughout the whole process. Although I am hearing the height, I just pulled up Deontay Banks' height. At the beginning of the draft process, he was 6'2". Now he's 6 foot. So I don't know who's lying about. I don't know who's lying about heights. If it's the college or if it's the scouts or whatever. I don't know. I really like him, and I like that he's mocked to us in a number of scenarios. I would prefer if we stay at 23, the Vikes, we get into what I want them to do at a different time. But he's one of the few that I'd be okay with. But it's hard. I mean, Joey Porter Jr., if he's there, I'd take him over Deontay Banks. I just don't think he's going to be there. So it's hard. I'm supposed to pick my favorite prospect. I'm not answering the question. Then I don't know. It's too hard. You asked the impossible question. I'll go Deontay Banks. I think we'll get him. I'm an honorable mention, Joey Porter Jr. and Julius Brents from K-State. The wild card. Later wild card guy.
He's just gonna like mention everyone.
I'll list them all.
Love Devin Witherspoon as well.
Yeah, Witherspoon would be great. Yeah, sure.
Oh my god!
Got to cast a wide net. Nick, who do you like in this class at corner?
I don't think you guys understand how good Emmanuel Forbes is about to be in the NFL.
Okay,
Forbes is so good. He's so valued because he's only 166, but he is just going to be a beast. I also obviously Christian Gonzalez is like the number one prospect. Everybody knows he's probably going to go the first corner off the board. Yes. But I also like a guy that could go a little later, maybe in the 20s, to a better team and it's better fit. So, I've seen him mocked to Detroit. That's a big need. I've seen him mocked to, a team like Seattle, Green Bay, maybe Baltimore. They're all around that 21 to 24. I think Forbes is, I think that's right for him. But with the correct fit, all these defenses have, needs for corner. And I think that if Forbes can go to one of those teams, he becomes a better player than a Christian Gonzalez, because Gonzalez might go to the Raiders at 7. And that's maybe not where, he's going to have so much success, just because Raiders. So, yeah, I like Forbes a lot. I've been watching a lot of film on him just because I think that he's been just a beast in college. So I'm excited to see what he can do.
Didn't he set the record for the most pick sixes too? Or doesn't he have
Yeah, he's just the biggest ball hawk. He had the most picks and pick sixes in his 3 years at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome.
Yeah, housed 6 in his collegiate career. Housed 3 of them just this past season. Did Emmanuel Forbes. So that's a nice pick. I like that one as well. For the sake of mixing it up a little bit, I'm going to go with Tyreek Stevenson. Out of Miami. I like just specifically, and because I've been pretty Vikings been pretty Flores minded when I've been looking at cornerbacks
Yeah.
For this particular draft, and he's a guy who in man coverage has had really good coverage grades, has had really good, QBR allowed and or passer rating allowed, and all those sort of advanced metrics. But has been a full-time starter for them on the outside for 2 seasons now. He transferred from somewhere in 2020. I can't remember where.
I think it was Georgia.
Was it? Okay. That actually sounds correct.
Yep, Georgia.
I think. Okay, yeah, good call. But yeah, transferred from Georgia to Miami, and then had 2 great seasons there. I think it was like a 48% completion percentage allowed for him this past season. Something like a 69 QBR, but really sticky in man coverage, pretty physical corner. And I like the value he could bring, most likely in like the late second for a team, and that could be, if the Vikings do trade down, they need a lot of picks. So that's somebody I could see them targeting, similarly to the way they got Andrew Booth last year in the trade back. So I guess I brought it back to the Vikings. One way.
That's all right. That's all right.
Always
yeah,
goes back to the Vikings.
Always bring it back to the Vikings.
I'm just
It was
impressed you
always-
guys came up with other cornerback prospects after I talked about them all, or
Yeah.
or name dropped them all. So
Yeah. No, that was a good one. Now let's jump to one that I think is equally not deep, but equally interesting. I think as the draft process kind of starts to evolve and we get a little bit closer to it. But let's go with linebacker really quick. And we might double up a little bit on these ones because they're fewer and further between for sure. But off-ball linebacker, a much maligned position in the modern NFL, but extremely important when you've got a good one. And I'll start this one off. We can go clockwise again. But I'm gonna go with Jack Campbell.
Damn it.
Everybody knows I
Future
like
Buffalo.
Jack Campbell, and I almost didn't. I almost went with another guy who, if nobody mentions, I'll bring him up briefly. But it was splitting hairs between those 2 guys. Jack Campbell has, and I really like him as a fit for Nick's Bills.
Yeah.
Huge Tremaine Edmonds like frame, otherworldly RAS score, 6'5", 250, ran a 4.65. So moving for his size, not crazy fast, but great length. Can do a lot of things as a blitzer. Functions really well in the box. He's a sure tackler. And I like the grit he brings to the table. So I'm gonna go with Jack Campbell. Michael, should I go counterclockwise as you spiral for another name?
That's exactly what I'm doing. Yes.
Yeah. We got.
Also, what I learned today about Jack, because I have been mocking him for a little bit for the Bills. So he was a Dick Butkus Award winner and an All-American. So let's just give him some respect. Yeah, Jack is a beast. I'll say that. I'm gonna actually go with Drew Sanders.
Sick.
I like Drew a lot. He was an edge at first at Alabama, and then he went to Arkansas, and he kind of moved to off ball. Literally just this past fall. So he's a newbie at the position. He was always an edge guy, but now that he's off ball, he's really flourished a little bit. So 11 sacks last year. I think that Drew Sanders could be a really good fit for any team because he kind of does it all in the sense that he was an edge guy. So if they need him to be that, he can definitely do that. And then if they need to be off ball, he was just doing it and getting sacks even in that role. So I think Drew Sanders is somebody that might not go in the first round, but could be a very early second round pick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not the same type of athletic ceiling, and it's a very loose comp, but functionally, I think he can do similar things and play a similar role to like Micah Parsons and Dan Quinn's offense, where it's like, oh shit, Jalen Smith sucks. Can you play off-ball linebacker? Leighton Vander Esch is hurt. Can you play off ball? Oh, what's his name? Or we're going to trade. We're going to get rid of Gregory, or DeMarcus Lawrence is down. Can you play 70 snaps at edge this week and just scream off the like? He can do all those things. He can blitz the B gaps. He can play off ball the entire time and play in those hook zones and just play the second level. But yeah, you're right. Like, he can do just about anything. He's extremely scheme versatile, very multi-positional in the front seven. So yeah, I think there's huge value to Drew Sanders, and I wouldn't be surprised, just because I think there's so many talented guys at the back end of the first. But I think some teams may regret not scooping him up in the late first, just because I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be so ready to contribute day one, and he's just going to find a role wherever he ends up. So I really like that one. I'm glad you brought him up. Josh, who you got?
Well, Drew Sanders was one of the first ones I was going to mention. So I agree with what bringing his name into the mix. I love the blitzing aspect and the fact that he used to be a rusher. I think that he's going to be, like you guys said, he's going to be great for whoever. I'm going to go with John, a guy you and I have talked about as, again, a Vikings fit that we really like. Out of Wazoo, I think they call it out there, Washington State, Dan Henley.
Yes, sir.
However you say it. Oh, sorry.
He was my number 2.
Listen,
That's
I
awesome.
could listen.
That's the name I was going to bring up if no one did.
You want me to bring up? But I had a second one that was kind of a. Do you want to take
talk about him? You talk about him. I got 3.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Deep bag.
I'll try to stay with just one then, for fear of stealing your other one.
Okay.
No, I like the coverage aspect that is he's able to stick with receivers over the field. And again, I'm sorry it's a Vikings lens, but we lost so many players over the middle of the field that we need a linebacker that can keep up somewhere. And especially if we're going to be blitzing a lot with Flores. So I love Dian Henley in there for us. I also just love the fact he only missed 5 tackles last year. I think tackling you can definitely coach. Obviously, everyone has to learn at some point, but at this level, I like guys that know how to tackle already, and so that's a really important trait for me. And he's quick. He's quick in the box. Like I think his 40 is like 4.5. He's not like that, which is really fast, obviously, but maybe not as fast as some of the more elite athletes. But I think he makes up for it. He has just the right amount of quickness whenever he needs it, whether it's hunting down the run in between the tackles or chasing a receiver out there. So Dian Henley would be one of my favorites out of Washington State.
Yeah, I like that one. And speaking of missed tackles, we're not going to do safeties for this exercise, but you mentioned only 5 missed tackles last season. Brian Branch has missed 4 tackles in his collegiate career.
Dude's a tackler.
He is a tackler, and he's always lined up in the slot, always in the run fit.
Yeah.
That's just like one of the sickest stats I know about. That's in my current stream of consciousness. So sorry to be tangential, but Mike, go for it. Who do you got? Who do we miss?
So all of my picks that I've had, I had like with Christian Gonzalez, love that he wore 0. Henley, love the fact that he played receiver and got converted to linebacker.
Yeah, you see it on tape.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. And so I have my 3 here. I have a man named Trenton Simpson out of Clemson.
Sure.
He's got a lot of versatility. He's got experience inside, outside. He's got a lot of bend to him, which to see somebody that can play inside and outside, it's really good to see that he's not, how do I put this? When there's certain middle linebackers, when they blitz, they kind of just run and hit a gap. Well, Trenton Simpson, like, he'll shake off a tackle as well.
I see what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah, like he is a defender when it comes to his position. So I really do like Trenton Simpson a lot. Not as much as Dian Henley, but yeah, if I had to pick somebody not named Henley.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's Trenton Simpson.
That he was the other guy I was going to bring up if you wanted to take Henley. So I
There
hear
you
you.
go.
This PFF called him the tight end eraser, and I think every team needs one of those. So I'd be happy with Simpson as well.
Yeah, he's money up the seam, and Simpson as a blitzer is he's just like a jackknife. Like you're right, he really just slices through gaps as opposed to just kind of filling one. He does really. I don't even know how to describe it. He's very shifty as a blitzer and as even as just knifing into the gap on a run play. Projects as a pretty solid like Sam linebacker in the NFL, especially if you're in an odd front. And yeah, can do some things off the ball in coverage for sure. I like Simpson as well. Last position we're going to talk about. I'm tempted to just do offensive line as a whole, but that could be a little busy. So let's do interior offensive line, for which I think this is a pretty good class as well. And yes, everyone, you can classify Peter Skoronski as a guard if you so choose.
Cool.
But I'm going to go first here, and a guy with whom I've become pretty enamored as we start to get closer to the draft here is Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. I like him better than John Michael Schmitz, Skyuman. I like him better than Joe Tippmann. I think I like him just as much as a guy like Juice Scruggs. I understand I'm only naming Big Ten centers at this point. But,
best ones come from there.
The best ones come. That's correct. If I knew the Iowa kid's name, I'd tell you. But Ricky Stromberg is one of the more underrated guys. He is an absolute stonewall in pass protection. He has a great anchor. He finishes blocks like an MFer. And he's just, he's just nasty. He's got that edge and that grit to him on the inside that I think you're looking for. 6'3", I think about 310. Oh, maybe I can pull that up. Something like that. But yeah, I mean, he's got great tape against some of the better interior pass rushers. It's easy to compare to guys like John Michael Schmitz and Joe Tippmann, for example, for that reason. But some of the more devout draft heads are big on Stromberg and everything I've seen from him and looked at. I think I tend to prefer him to some of the more house-held names on the interior offensive line. And there's another guy I can't not have mentioned, but we'll go around the horn first and see if anybody gets to him. Michael, who you got on the inside?
Well, you brought him up a lot for not liking him. Joe Tippmann.
Sure, he's good.
I will say that I goes to Wisconsin, so of course I gotta bring him up. I I have his draft profile pulled up here, and I'm looking at a player comparison for at the pro level, and I kind of want to take it away because it's Josh Myers.
Oh no!
So I kind of want to take away my answer because of how I feel about Josh Myers. But no, I think Tippmann's kind of he's like a big center. He's 6'6". Yeah. He's a big guy. I think he does really struggle based on the little bit of film I've seen of him because college all-22. But I've noticed that he kind of struggles off the snap a little bit. He kind of like, I don't know the best way to explain it, but he kind of falls forward before he engages with a block. Like, he isn't a wall in that situation. He's going to them, or he's not going to them, I should say. He doesn't really directly engage with the block, kind of just falls forward and lets the defender catch him almost. His hands aren't really ever inside all too well. So hopefully, that's something that can be taught around. But I do think that he, with his size, does have the potential to maybe move to guard. I do think I think he's agile enough, and his, like I said, his size
great in space. Great in
exactly.
space.
I think that him making a move to guard isn't exactly out of the question, depending on what team he goes to, right? Like, I could see, like, I'm not even sure. Like, I know Green Bay needs O-line, but they don't need really interior besides. I mean, they just got Josh Myers. We can't give up on him yet. But
yeah, should have taken Creed Humphrey.
Yeah, you're telling me. So yeah, I hate that that's his player comparison, but yeah, I'm going with Joe Tippmann.
Yeah, the only one that came to mind for me was Justin Britt. I don't know if you guys remember him in Houston right now, if I'm not mistaken. 2016 Pro Bowler in Seattle. I think that was his first year starting at center. Played some tackle initially for Seattle, but he's that 6'6", 310, 315 at center, and was revelatory that year for sure. But that frame is kind of on the interior. You do end up kind of hugging a lot inadvertently because you got the long arms. You lack natural leverage in those engagements. Josh, that was Oli Udo's problem at guard. And then you kick those 34.5-inch arms or whatever they are out to tackle, and all of a sudden he's able to extend them before he engages with the defender. And he's got some good reps out there. But I think that's something he'll always sort of have to deal with. I'm sure there's some technique to it, keeping your arms tight or something. Yeah, that's a tough thing to get over with that build. But yeah, when he pulls, when he gets to the second level, he's certainly a problem. I don't mind the Tippmann pick at all. Josh, who you got on the interior offensive line? And then we'll just touch on we'll have Nick too. We'll do one more segment quick, and then we'll get wrapped up here.
Sounds good. Well, I have to give a shout out to the unnecessary amount of mock drafts we all do in the off season now, because I would never have heard of this guy unless I had done like 10 random drafts one night. His name is Chandler Zavala from NC State, and
Picks in the fourth.
Well, so here's the problem with that.
The third,
maybe even the second, according to our guy Brett Coleman again. They found out, and I hadn't thought about him since I picked him in some random mock late, and I was like, okay. I watched some highlights, I looked at some tape, and again, I'm not like an expert scout or anything, but I looked at some stuff. I was like, man, this guy's pretty good. I wouldn't mind him. If he's a late round pick, that was my analysis. Like, if he's a late round pick, great. And now he's flying up the boards. He's like 78th on the PFF big board, 6'5", 320. I think the issue was he started football late, went to some D2 school because he had zero recruits.
Played a lot of soccer growing up.
Yeah. He played a lot of soccer. So his feet are really good from what I've been hearing. I like that he's one of those guys that's always looking for someone else to hit. And again, that's not the most technical analysis, but that's what I want my offensive line to do, is hit somebody. And if you can't hit them anymore, go find someone else to hit until the whistle blows. And he does that really well. He only gave up like 4, I think the stat was 4 pressures last year, and so 400 plus snaps. And that was in pass pro, where, that would be the area where he needs most improvement from what it sounds like. And coming from a team that really needs interior O-line help. Chandler Zavala, like I said, I stumbled across his name. I'm not like some secret finder guy of these guys, but he's catapulting up on the board. And I don't even know I bet he goes in the late second now. If I had to
Yeah.
guess based on what I've heard recently. So, but yeah, that's the name I got.
Dude, I love Chandler Zavala. If you haven't yet, I think Coleman has a Senior Bowl interview with
Yeah.
Chandler Zavala.
Yep,
If you haven't-
he referenced that in another video I watched. Yeah, that's the other thing that's setting him up the boards is he's doing all that stuff really well. Like I think teams are getting excited to work with him, so that might overshadow or that might compensate for some of any if any deficiencies he has because of the lack of experience. So
yeah, Chandler Zavala, ball knower. Nick, who you got?
One of my favorite movie moments of all time is when in The Shining, Jack Nicholson says, "Here's Johnny," and his name is Jack Torrance, right? Well, that comes to my mind because I'm thinking of Osiris Torrance, who's one of my favorite draft people of all time. And when he comes to Bills at 27, he's gonna say, "Here's Osiris," and I'm ready to block for you, Josh Allen. I'm excited. We need Osiris Torrance more than anybody I've ever seen, and he is my favorite card in this draft, and it's not even close.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, he's a hog molly. Yeah, it took us a second to figure out where you were going.
that was an epic buildup. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, that was, man. I was like, all right, movie. What are we talking? We talking Draft Day? We talking, Little Giants?
Yeah.
The Shining. All right, where we go?
The Shining. The world's biggest football movie.
That's right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want to briefly mention Steve Avila, TCU.
Yeah.
He's sick. He has one of the best anchors in the class. I think as a pass blocker, he's probably right up there with Skoronski as far as just NFL ready pass blocking guard. I mean, Skoronski's tape is largely at tackle, but the short arms, everybody's kind of making that assumption already. But Steve Avila, 11 pressures in over 700 pass rush snaps last season. And remember, a lot of those pass rush snaps came in the college football playoffs against serious competition. He has good tape against some of the best interior pass rushers in the class that are coming out. He's a guy who might sneak into the first. He might go right after Osiris Torrance as one of those next interior guys off the board. Who knows? Osiris Torrance going at 27, right, Nick?
He's absolutely going at 27.
27. So, yeah, Avila could sneak in at 29, 30.
How cool of a nickname is The Shining, though, if Osiris Torrance is
yeah.
is the
Yeah, and then you start, it's like one of my two favorite characters. You got Miley Cyrus, you got Osiris, and then you got
Miley Cyrus is a real person.
My favorite character.
Miley Cyrus and Jack Nicholson combined. He's my offensive card.
Awesome.
My favorite character, this real person.
That's awesome. Oh, man. All right. Well, let's do a speed round here quick. We're going to I know Michael's got to jump off in a couple minutes. If we go a little bit past that, so be it. They won't cut us off here. But we'll start with you, Michael. Overarching the entire draft, who is your favorite? Just, who's your sleeper guy? Who's hashtag your guy in this draft that, maybe isn't projected in the first that people might not know a ton about? I have a feeling I know who yours is, by the way.
I think you know who it is.
But pound the table for him quick on our last segment here.
I have been tweeting for the past month. Make way for Mingo. I love Jonathan Mingo, and I will do anything for him to be in green and gold.
Nice.
Anything at all. I love Jonathan Mingo.
Jonathan Mingo, wide receiver, Ole Miss.
Yes.
He is pretty sick. Tell us a little bit about why you like him for the Packers or for wherever he goes.
I mean, I'm going to tell you why I like him for the Packers because I have to tell myself that's where he's going. I just think like when we brought up earlier, entering a new era, and let's say Green Bay doesn't take a receiver high, and they're just like, yeah, we've been finding him in the second. Let's continue to do it. I think I personally am happy with Jonathan Mingo being taken in the first, like not at 13, but trade back a little bit. I think he's that high caliber of a receiver. A couple of days ago had a really long day. I came home and watched Jonathan Mingo highlights. I have never done that for any other college player.
Nice.
I'd have to go back and find it, but there's one catch that he had where he had to like kind of dive and make a little bit of a breadbasket behind the dude's helmet, caught it, and just kept going.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
It is insane. It was in that moment. I tweeted that video on YouTube, and I was like, that was the beginning of Make Way for Mingo.
Make way for Mingo. I like that.
He does anything well, honestly.
Awesome blocker.
Yes,
as well.
And
awesome.
Matt LaFleur loves receivers that can block.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. Yeah, I could see it, man. I wouldn't like it, but I could see it. Cool. All right. Josh, we'll jump to you. Michael, if you got to jump off, we'll talk at you next week. Well, maybe later this week if you're on the draft show. We'll be live on Thursday too.
Yes, I will be there.
Michael's going to join us, so we'll see you then.
Absolutely.
Have a good one, man.
Hey, Michael.
All right, Josh.
All right,
who's hashtag your guy?
I'm going to stick with the guy I've been with since the very first time I started looking at prospects this offseason. His name is B.J. Ojulari. He's an edge rusher from LSU. He's 6'2", but he's longer than that. And so I got that from Brett Coleman again, but also I confirmed what I thought I saw in B.J. Ojulari watching him. So I he has the length to make up for a little bit of his size because he's going to need to get bigger at the next level. But he's got a ton of speed off the edge, and he's got a good pass rushing arsenal. He's got good moves. The highlights I saw, he was doing like classic swim moves, like getting around, like he was a big classic D end moving around a tackle. And so I think, he's not a first round pick, I don't think, but if for a team that trades back middle of second round or early, even second round, you're getting a guy that you can put opposite whatever your best pass rusher is. And he's going to contribute. He's going to get a decent amount of sacks, and he's going to be a super annoying player for opposing defenses to deal with or offensive lines to deal with. And I just think in this day and age, edge, maybe because I've been spending so much time watching them, but you have to have pass rush in this league. It doesn't matter how good your corners are, how good your linebackers are. You have to have pass rush to play defense in this league. With how fast quarterbacks get the ball out and things like that, you have to make things uncomfortable. So, B.J. Ojulari is going to be my guy going forward, and I hope that the Vikings get him somehow.
Yeah, 34 and a half inch arms at like 6'2" or whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's nuts. Yeah, I like Ojulari a lot. I think maybe a better prospect than Aziz coming out, and Aziz has turned out pretty well.
Yep.
For the Giants there. So yeah, that's a good call. Nick, who's your guy this class that you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, I mean, we've been letting them know about Adetomiwa Debawar for a long time now, and he is a stud. He's just we've been talking about him for so long. He's still a sleeper because we still don't know about him so much. He's just a freak, 6'2". What is he? 6'2", 288, like 285 to 80. He's a beast. He's kind of a freak. He reminds me of like JOC. Jock coming out a couple of years ago, but he's just like bigger and like a little more of a freak. And I just really like him. I think that whoever grabs him in the second round or third round, whatever happens, will have a really good one.
Was it a 4.49 he ran?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.49. So
Jesus Christmas, dude. Yeah, I mean, just a guy that size moving like that. And you see, if you watch any of his tape and you like, or there's a lot of like freeze frames I've seen where he's like, the ball has just been snapped. He's up and he's got his arms pumping, and then the other 3 D linemen are just like barely have their third hand off, their hand off the ground. I mean, he has insane get off,
Yep.
awesome burst and acceleration, crazy frame. At the next level, he's probably a 4-3 end on first down or a 3-4-5 tech and kicking inside and rushing the passer on late downs. Like, yeah, he's got all the tools. He's like Trayvon Walker level of just like, whoa, he ran what?
Yeah.
He's out, what are his measurables? Okay, fuck it, dude. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And he went to Northwestern, so he has good play recognition.
Yeah.
Yes. There you go.
That's right.
Here you go.
The YouTube rabbit hole got me to combine highlights of the defensive ends running the 40-yard dash, which normally I wouldn't. I don't care how fast the D end runs a 40-yard dash, but his 4.49, you're like, whoa, okay. Didn't think guys that big could run that fast. That's wild.
Yep, that's just always a fun. It's like when Jordan Davis ran the like 4.83, and you're just like, what? Like sure, whatever. And then Devontae Wyatt ran like a tiny bit slower, but you're like, Jesus, what are they feeding him in Georgia?
Right.
But yeah, that was a sick combine. That probably skyrocketed him up a few boards at least. I've watched a copious amount of TCU tape, just because I acquiesced some college all-22 recently, and that's one of the teams that I have a pretty deep archive of, or I obtained anyway. And so I watched a ton of TCU offense and a decent amount of TCU defense. I like Kendre Miller. That's where I fell in love with Steve Avila. But another guy who I think is pretty unsung so far in this class is Dylan Horton, who is an edge out of TCU. 6'4", 255, 260. Some pretty good versatility. Justin Herbert's in the chat.
Let's go. Oh.
Let's go. Justin Herbert, how'd you find us, bro?
Nice.
Let's go. That's like...
Justin, I picked the Chargers to win the AFC West. I got you. All right, hang on. I'm going to read the question here.
Who's that draft? Justin, man.
Only rookies. Number 6. Landing spot's really important to me for rookies. Yeah, thanks, Kev, for putting us on. Way to go, boss. Driving traffic.
Number 6 is really tough because you got like
6 is really tough. I think a lot of that comes down to fit, and
is it
projected kind of playing time. But I like Zay Flowers wherever he goes. He could be gettable at 6, depending on how things fall.
Is it a super flex league? Do we know?
Yeah, give us a little more info. Oh, geez, get out of here! Get out of here, dude!
Oh, bro, I got horrible QBs. Yeah.
What precedent is there for that? Come on, left field. Yeah, horrible. He's got horrible QBs.
Well, if it's not super flex, you might have a shot at CJ Stroud or somebody, or like a Bryce Young. Probably not, but maybe.
Yeah, and with the QBs, you got to look at who's okay.
Very, very perplexing end to this.
Yeah, it is. It is. We had prepared a little bit for the rest. Flowers to the Vikings. Zay Flowers to the Vikings. Slam that at 6, Justin Herbert. Slam that at 6 if Zay Flowers.
I like Zay Flowers too. I agree. So excited.
That feels like that sort of range because Bijan's probably gone. Bryce Young's probably gone. JSN's probably gone, but you never.
He's definitely gone because JSN would be gone before Zay.
you never know who's
His
who's
kids,
left.
man, kids love Jason.
And running backs are hard.
Right.
Running backs are hard these days with everyone using a committee. So I think Bijan's the 101 for sure. Maybe even Jahmyr Gibbs in the top 5, top 4.
I was just gonna say
I
Gibbs.
saw that Miami's looking to trade to get Gibbs.
Yeah, and it was weird. Like last year, dynasty leagues, you knew, and fantasy leagues, whatever, you knew early on. You're like, okay, Dameon Pierce is getting the workload in Houston.
Right.
You know, he's production-wise, he's probably going to be top 20 or
See,
whatever.
Justin Herbert should have been watching the entire stream because we were just talking about some good guys. Drew, my boy, Drew Sanders.
We talked about linebackers. I think, Drew Sanders, if he's classified that way, is going to get you a lot of production. He'll get home to the quarterback. He's going to blitz a lot. If he's utilized properly, he'll come screaming off the edge. Another guy that we talked about is Deion Henley out of Washington State, who, depending on where he goes, if he looks like he's going to start, I think he'll have great ball production. Might have a couple of picks, a couple of swats. I think he'll get into the backfield a fair amount, athletic. Those are probably my two favorites off the top. And depending on where he goes again, Yasir Abdullah out of Louisville, maybe even get him in the 3rd. Depending on where you go, he's another kind of hybrid guy who should get some sack production.
And then Trenton.
Yeah, that's
Simpson,
interesting. How many teams are you running there?
Good question.
Yeah,
I would also include Simpson in there because we were talking about him at large.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Trenton Simpson, Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd think about that too.
So he's got like 4 really solid choices.
Yeah, man. Let us come back to the show. Let us know how you did. When's the draft? Right after the real one? I've got mine Sunday night. Josh, you're in that league.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got ours Sunday night. So yeah, we'll get back at 12 team. Yeah, I hear you. NBA playoffs have been wild.
Wolves are trying to extend tonight. We'll see.
Yes, sir.
And then the Hawks beat the Celtics, by the way.
God, no, is it 2-2?
3-2. 3-2.
Heat are up 3-1 on the Bucks. Lakers are up 3-1 on the Grizzlies. Monday night draft for Justin. Justin will be back here next Tuesday night. So come back to the chat. Let us know how that draft went, man. And we'll tell you a little bit about ours. We'll be recapping that. Sixers all the way, no rest for Embiid. Yeah, they've had a cakewalk. Cool.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody who hopped into the chat. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking a little ball. We'll be right back here next week at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bite Size Sports Network. This has been Necessary Roughness. Stay tuned for the rest of the week. We've got the Bounce on Thursday night doing a round 1 sort of recap for as much as is complete by then. Friday, we're doing a live stream during round 1 of the draft. So you can come check us out on playback.tv. That'll be streaming to YouTube as well. So come watch the draft with us, man. Join the chat. We'll be kicking back, talking ball, and discussing the picks as they come off the board. Who needs Mel Kiper?
That's right.
Are we live Thursday or Friday or both?
Thursday.
Thursday,
we
right?
could probably go live Friday too at some point. I'm sure people would jump on. I'll be live Friday on Minnesota Sports Talk. If anybody is a Vikings fan, you can check us out over there. And then Tuesday, we'll have a ton to recap. We'll talk dynasty drafts. We'll talk NFL draft fits. And at that point too, we'll have a lot more context around those dynasty picks. Absolutely. What guys will get playing time? I love this guy.
Oh, let's do it. Let's do it. Sorry, Nick.
You John, you love that because you love the Chargers, and obviously
they're the AFC Vikings, dude. if this happened, those teams would be trying so fucking hard to lose. It would be the best finish ever.
Yeah, it really would.
Oh, that would be electric.
I'm already
Okay.
I'm already nervous for that game. I can't handle it. I
I
already
like
have
that
severe anxiety for that game.
Yes. Yeah, dude. I've been so excited for a playoff berth or a Super Bowl berth my whole life, but now the more I think about it, I think I'm more terrified of a Super Bowl
excited.
loss. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like, oh God, what's gonna happen? Oh man. But yeah, that's yeah, I like that call, Justin. We'll see you there, man. Yeah, stay tuned next Tuesday. Rest of the week, we got a full slate. So you can get all your sports coverage right here on the Bite Size Sports Network. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Gentlemen, have a good rest of your night. We'll see you later.
Have a
See
great
you
one,
guys.
boys.
Thanks.